sais pas si ça c'est utile.
Okay.
Donc,
All right, Michel. So, tell us about your life. How did you first get inspired? What was it about your life that started inspiring you to go in this direction?
yes, so around 50, I began to write a document in the four steps. À la recherche de la vérité, which is, in translation, is find the truth. And then I have a second volume for the love of art. And then creation of the future, and then how to transform the world.
Nice.
So that was four steps. It took me around 10 years to write all those stuff and to document my own life, because before I was very busy by my own life, and I have no time to look at my life. But I say after 1/2 century, I should look at what I have done, what is the meaning of all those stuff, and to have a better understanding. And I think that kind of work is very important. Everybody should do this, because again, the most important person in your life is yourself. And if you don't know yourself, you just lost your time, and have a good knowledge of what you have done and why you do this or not do this is very important. Of course, also what I discover, and I'm very happy of this, that I was always interested, very young, I was interested by, I can find some writing of me very young saying that I feel living with deaf people, that the living person are already dead. Because it was very strange for me, was that most of the people who was living around me, for me they was dead already, because they was not expressing their own genius. They just was comparing themselves to others and trying to be just socially accepted. So that was really boring. But actually the only person I find interesting was authors who already have died, as Shakespeare. I was very early touched by Shakespeare, or Proust, or any other. And I find them so amazing and so lively. So I was in the book and reading those books all the day. And I say, oh, it would have been amazing to live with those people. All the people around me are so boring, but those people are so interesting. And so very early, I dedicate myself. I always say that people can be interested by flower or I don't know, car or wine or anything. But me, I am interested by genius. The only thing which interests me really in life is not sport or have a beautiful car, or it is to meet some genius. Or as most of them are already died, I prefer read a good book of Shakespeare that take time with somebody who are saying boring stuff, And so that was very helpful, because I was so focused on this all my life, I had been I have been meeting with the most important genius of my time, even if there was not no as this as being genius at those time, but as myself I was focused to those person, even if nobody know or was have discovered those person, actually I was attracted by them even before there was no. And that was already the great pleasure of my life, is to have known the most important genius of my time. And a good example was somebody who was mostly unknown when I met him, was Andy Warhol, who began one of the most important artists of the end of the previous century. So, but I meet a lot of genius all my life. All my life I was with genius, and of course genius who become very well known, but also sometimes, for example, I remember I found somebody in the street who was very poor, and I began to speak. I gave him some money, and I began to speak with him, and he was answering in a so amazing way. And I say, come to my home, and then we stay all the week. And he was a genius, but he was very poor, unknown. He died later. He write me a paper later saying he was dying. And nobody ever take care of him. But he was a genius. You know, you have unknown genius. And so when I began to write my memory, I discovered, oh wow, I really was lucky, because I discovered how my life was interesting, because also I try to live in each minute as a genius minutes, you know, try to understand what is my singularity, try to understand what is the singularity of the other person I have in front of, or try to understand the singularity of this moment, of this very unique present moment, you know. So perhaps I can tell you a little my life, as this the person will understand the context. So this is the first book, and this first book I love it, because actually I don't have most of them. I lost the memory of all this, but I document all this as a scientist, you know, trying to understand somebody which I was not anymore, you know, and to make it the more scientifically possible. So I began to write about my family, my father origins and my mother origins. And then I write about my first year. I born in 1955. And then I began to explain or try to discover what happens each year, you know. What was the major event, and try to find picture of me at this age. And for example, my great father, who was a painter, make a beautiful painting of me at 3, you know. And it is very interesting, because I can remember this very special moment where I was very happy, because my parents give me a little horse. And I was in this little horse, and I feel so happy on the horse, you know, which was not a true horse, you know. It was a game, you know, a little. And my great father, do a painting of this. Actually, do a series of painting, and I have those here. We will be able to see it. And this is very important moment, because it is my first memory of being to exist. You know? Actually, I have done a rebirth with psychological technique of rebirth. So I remember even my born. But that was not natural. It was really a psychological kind of work where you are able by regression to remember your born. And then I grow up. So, for example, here I am 59, and a major pleasure I had at those time was to do ski. I love ski, and it was very important for me, ski, because I find school very boring. And I had one sister and one brother who was younger, and two brothers who was older. So I was in the middle of the family, and that was easy and not easy because, I always feel that my parents was too busy with other things or too busy with other child, and not enough focus on me. So anyway, but I think a lot of child live this experience. And for example, I remember also when I was 7, I went to school and I was happy, and school was really difficult for me because I find, and I discover later, at those times they don't know exactly what was dyslexia, but so they was even hurting me. I mean, the teacher at those time, when you was doing wrong, they hurt you. And so as I was a dyslexic, they don't understand why I cannot remember stuff, But my memory is more focused on relations than stuff. So everything which is idiomatic is difficult for me, but I have a very good memory of everything which can be related to something else. And actually that gives me amazing capability in terms of data, because I am able to make a big picture of a lot of different data, which most of the time people cannot really understand the complexity. So I am a complex person who are able to think about complex stuff, but not very good to do very special tasks or remember a number, or I'm not good at that, but I can remember Shakespeare, all the book of Shakespeare I have in my head, and I can even quote Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that is a question. You see how much my memory is great. No, it is a joke.
Yes, nobody knows that one. That was just you. That was just you. Yeah. So how did your childhood affect your development and your ways of looking at the world?
Dyslexia, I think first, at those times they was considering I was a kind of low, it was a kind of expression of low intelligence. And so I was say when I was young that I was a poor person. So that affected me a lot, because I was desperate, because I was saying myself that I will never be the good person, So I was very sad of this. And it is only when I was 30 I began to make very interesting tests about my own intelligence, and in America actually, and they discover that I have outstanding capability, at the contrary of what I know from myself for 30 years. So that was a kind of interesting kind of pivot. And I began to also, because of those tests, I began to really know how to use my own intelligence. But at those time, as I was also in a family of doctors, I was, my parents, for example, I began a psychanalysis about around 5 or 7 or 5, and I continued until 25. So I had the chance to have a very long psychanalysis of myself. But that was very interesting. Of course, it don't change anything about my dyslexia, because at those times they don't know at all what it was. But actually, because it was a psychanalysis with a Lacanian, I had the chance to have a good opportunity to work on myself and to have a deep understanding of myself, and that was very, anyway, that was very precious. And even if nobody was really aware of my capability, myself very quickly I began to live in a special world by myself, where my capability was developing. And I remember, for example, write a letter to my parents saying I need to really develop my own education by myself, and I will continue the classical education, but I decide to make my own program, because I found the program was very slow and was not really I was not really interesting, because everything was separated. And me, I wanted make link between mathematics and philosophy and sociology and psychology. What interested me was to make link between different kind of knowledge. And also, I was able very young to read books very quickly and to have an overview of a field which was not natural from the other children I look around me. For example, I was able to get interested by quantum physics at 15 and read stuff about this. Nobody around me was doing this, but me, I was reading book and book. And very quickly I understand the big picture of this field. And of course I was not a physician and I was not able to do calculus, but I have a deep philosophical understanding of what means the Einstein equation and stuff like that. So in a way I developed myself by myself, but not with the help of the people around me, and I always find them very boring most of the time. The only person I don't find boring was the few persons who are really involved in creativity. And actually, my grandfather was a painter, so we was able to speak together in depth, and I was taking hours just looking to him how he was doing painting. I was really amazed by that. But for example, other children will be very interested by, I don't know, looking crazy stuff at the TV, and I have no interest at all. Or even most of the movie was boring because I know already the end after 5 minutes. So it was a very strange life, because in a way I was developing myself very far from the other. And hopefully I have done this, because out of this my special mind will, my special way of doing stuff, I will not have. And of course I am always a little sad, because if I I think in the future education will evolve more to take care of the uniqueness of each person. And if I have been in a very, if I have been with more qualified people around me, I think I could have grow even more quickly and really already make interesting. Oh, but actually, when I look at what I've done very early, you know, you look at this painting, I am amazed because now I have a lot of culture, artistic culture. I can value what I've done, and I just say it is just so good. And I was 15, you know, so. And when I look at in 71, my first writing, and this poem, I just read again this poem. I have no memory, and I am not the same person. It is as I am reading a poem of somebody else, and I'm just amazed at the quality of this poem, you know. So, and this drawing, you know. So it is very interesting for me because for me, I don't take it personally, you know. I am not, it is not me who make me, you know. It is the infinite who make me. And I have no, it is a gift, I had a gift, but it is not a gift that I give to myself, so I have nothing to do with, I mean, I am lucky, and I just celebrate. I was so lucky to have, and that was my first painting. And for me, it was already the infinite. You know, it was a egg or eyes. I don't know exactly. And so I was writing. When I was 15, I began to write. A newspaper, not a newspaper, journal, and write poems and do painting. And so my two major expression channel was really painting and writing, you know, from the beginning. And later, when I was in America, and they began to study my talents and stuff as this, I discovered that I was very good to do painting, but even better to writing, but even better to do music. And actually music, I never developed music because always I was saying, okay, there are already too much work with the painting and the writing. But then I actually it is very strange because always, later I buy a piano, but in a lot of places where I was living there was a piano, so I would come near the piano and play, and I never tried to imitate anything, you know. I just take the piano and play, and perhaps we will do this. And for me, it is true that to play piano it is even more joy than painting or writing. And actually, I never take ever a little lesson about piano or music. I don't know anything about music, but just being in front of the piano and I play, and what happens is just amazing. And I think later I need to develop this because depending on what they say, it is my major talents, even more than painting and writing, and I should develop it. So I was considering perhaps, and this is why I bought the piano and really, and my way of thinking, or my way of doing things is creativity. So, and my talents is creativity. So I never ever learn anything. For me, the learning process thing, I never it is, I never learned to paint, I never learned to write. It is just to connect myself to in the infinite, and then I do the painting and I do the writing. But that is completely disconnected with everything I have learned, you know. And even everything I have learned is an obstacle. So it is why I think even when I was young, and at those time I was really not very educated still, and I have done amazing things already. And now I am very educated because I have read all my life, so I read more than most of the people. And I also read very quickly, so I can read 10 books by week. So you can imagine somebody who read 10 books by weeks for 60 years. I give all my books to the university because I was bored to to transport them, but there was around 2,000 books. And all those books give me a kind of culture that I need to have a better understanding of myself. But this culture have nothing to do with creativity. My creativity comes from the infinite, you know. So even it is why I like to don't know anything about music, because I'm sure it is better for me to don't know anything. Now when I write, you know, I know I have read so much that always when I began to write, I began to compare. That is very bad because you know, if you begin to say, oh, does what I do is so, it is still not so good that Shakespeare, so that is quite boring. Because as soon you compare, because you are not Shakespeare, you will never so good as Shakespeare, so you have to be yourself, and that is only true, you know, to be yourself. And then the infinite makes from you something, you know, you never know.
Right, so if you're open to being the best version of yourself and then letting the infinite help you do that, that's the ideal way of being.
Yes, I think as soon as you have an ideal, it is most of the time something coming from outside, you know. You are not what you like to be, you know, you are what you are. And what you are is a mystery, very deep mystery. And the most precious part of yourself is unknown and very disturbing for yourself and everybody around you. So you have to cherish this crazy guy or woman, or you have to cherish what makes you unique and disturbed. And I love Cocteau say, you know, what everybody hate to you from you, you should cherish it, because here is your genius. Because you disturb everybody, because you are unique, you are different. Nobody won't see this very crazy part of yourself. So only you can cherish it. And I think that is a good bridge with what I think would be the next civilization. It will be about creativity, and it will be about unfold in each person his own genius. So it is why my quest for genius, of course, it is very unique. I never meet any person who was interested by genius. Most of the people, they are afraid of the genius, you know. And it is why for me it was, for example, when I meet Andy Warhol, it was very easy for me because it was just as a brother, you know. But most of the people was afraid by Andy Warhol. And most of the people are afraid by genius. So they don't relate. They don't are able to get intimate with genius because they say, it is a genius, so it is not me. I am not a genius, so I am not allowed to speak